In the peaceful little town of Maple Ridge, life moved slowly, the way people liked it. Everyone knew their neighbors, doors were left unlocked, and families gathered for Sunday barbecues. Among them was the Harris family, a picture of warmth, stability, and love. Michael Harris, a hardworking contractor in his late 30s, was known for his reliability and calm nature. He built half the homes in the neighborhood and always offered a helping hand to anyone who needed it. His wife, Laura, worked as a nurse at the local clinic. She was the type of woman who baked cookies for the neighbors and left thank-you notes for the mailman. Their two children, Sophie, age 8, and Ethan, age 6, were cheerful, polite, and loved by everyone at school. On the surface, the Harris family seemed to have it all: love, laughter, and a modest but happy home. But sometimes, even in the safest towns, the worst nightmares hide behind the brightest smiles. It was a rainy Friday night in early spring when tragedy struck. The storm had rolled in quickly, thunder echoing through the quiet streets. Around 10:45 p.m., a neighbor, Mrs. Keller, was startled by a loud crash followed by screams. Moments later, the Harris home erupted in flames, the fire raging so violently that nearby trees caught alight. Firefighters arrived within minutes, but by then, the blaze had devoured almost everything. The smell of smoke mixed with the sound of sirens and desperate voices. When rescuers finally made their way inside, what they found sent chills through the entire town. In the living room lay the bodies of Laura and the two children. Their injuries didn't match what the fire alone could have caused. There were bruises, broken glass, and blood, clear signs of a struggle. Near the kitchen doorway, Michael Harris was found unconscious but alive, his body burned and battered. He was rushed to the hospital, barely clinging to life. At first, investigators believed it was a tragic accident, a gas leak or faulty wiring, but something didn't sit right. The gas valve was still intact. A shattered window hinted at forced entry, and in the ashes, detectives found footprints that didn't belong to Michael. That night, Maple Ridge lost more than a family, it lost its peace. And the truth behind that fire would turn out to be darker than anyone could imagine. When Michael Harris was pulled from the wreckage of his burning home, few believed he would survive. His body was covered in burns, his skull fractured, and smoke had filled his lungs. Doctors placed him in a medically induced coma, unsure if he would ever wake again. For days, machines did the breathing his damaged lungs could not. The town of Maple Ridge mourned deeply. Laura and the children's funeral was held within the week. Hundreds attended, neighbors, friends, even strangers who felt the tragedy as if it were their own. Michael's hospital bed remained surrounded by flowers and cards that said, "Wake up soon, Mike." But no one truly expected him to open his eyes again. Meanwhile, the investigation began to lose momentum. What started as an open and shut case of a gas leak quickly turned into confusion. Fire investigators ruled out any malfunction. There were two separate points of ignition, suggesting the fire had been started deliberately. Detective Sarah Mitchell, a seasoned investigator from the county's major crimes unit, noticed other strange details. Laura's wedding ring, something she never removed, was missing. Her phone was shattered beyond repair, as though someone had stomped on it. And even more suspiciously, the security system had been cut off 10 minutes before the fire began. Whoever did this knew exactly what they were doing. But with the only surviving witness in a coma, progress came to a painful halt. Weeks turned into months. The trail grew cold, evidence grew thin, and Maple Ridge tried to move on, though whispers of the Harris fire still haunted local coffee shops and late-night conversations. Then, after 7 long months, a nurse doing her morning rounds noticed something: Michael's hand moved. At first, she thought it was a reflex. But when she leaned closer, she heard a faint whisper escape his cracked lips. "Where's Laura?" The moment word reached the detectives, they rushed to the hospital. Michael was weak, barely able to speak, but in his foggy, trembling voice, he said something that changed everything. "I know who did it." Those 6 words broke the silence that had hung over Maple Ridge for months. The man everyone thought would die had just become the key to solving one of the most shocking crimes the town had ever seen. When detectives entered Michael Harris's hospital room, they expected confusion, maybe fragments of memory, perhaps fear. But what they got was a name that no one saw coming. With trembling lips and eyes filled with pain, Michael whispered, "It was David, Laura's brother." The words stunned everyone in the room. David Carter, Laura's older brother, had been one of the first people to arrive at the fire scene that night. He had cried openly, helped organize the funerals, and stood beside Michael's hospital bed for weeks. To everyone in Maple Ridge, David was family, dependable kind, the man who'd lost his sister and niece and nephew in the same night. Detective Sarah Mitchell asked carefully, "Michael, are you sure? You saw David?" Michael nodded weakly. "I heard them fighting, Laura and David, about money. She told him no. He said she'd regret it." Those words opened a new chapter in the case. Detectives began digging into David's life, and what they uncovered painted a very different picture from the grieving brother everyone thought they knew. David had recently quit his job at a local auto shop and had thousands of dollars in gambling debts. Several of his creditors had already taken him to court, but what tied him to the crime was something far more chilling. A $200,000 life insurance policy Laura had taken out years earlier. It named both her husband and her brother as beneficiaries, in case something ever happened to her. When detectives discovered that David had inquired about claiming insurance benefits only 2 weeks after the fire, alarms went off immediately. Michael's memory, though fragmented, gave investigators details that hadn't been made public. He remembered seeing a red gas can, hearing the click of a lighter, and a voice saying, "It's too late now." That level of detail convinced police he wasn't hallucinating. When detectives brought David in for questioning, he appeared calm, even sympathetic. He claimed he'd been at a casino miles away during the fire, playing cards until closing. But when police pulled surveillance footage, his story fell apart. He had left the casino at 9:37 p.m., more than an hour before the Harris house went up in flames. The mask of the grieving brother was starting to crack. And beneath it, detectives began to see something much darker. A man desperate enough to kill his own family for money. Detectives now had a name and a motive, but they needed solid proof. Everything about David Carter's behavior began to look suspicious once the police stopped seeing him as a grieving brother and started seeing him as a suspect. His sympathy now seemed rehearsed, the tears, the public mourning, the way he kept inserting himself into the investigation, asking if they'd found anything new. Detective Sarah Mitchell and her team decided to dig deeper. They obtained a search warrant for David's home, and what they discovered peeled away the facade of innocence he'd built so carefully. Behind his house, in a rusted metal fire pit, officers found partially burned clothes, a dark hoodie, and a pair of jeans that matched the description of what Michael had said he saw the night of the fire. Lab tests later confirmed traces of gasoline embedded in the fabric. In the garage, police found an empty red gas can tucked behind storage boxes. The biggest shock came when investigators searched his bedroom. Hidden inside a drawer under his bed was Laura's missing wedding ring, the same one she'd never taken off. Forensic testing revealed faint traces of soot and blood on it, her blood. When confronted, David's calm composure cracked for the first time. "You think I'd do this to my own sister?" he shouted, slamming his fists on the table during interrogation. "I loved her." But Detective Mitchell noticed something odd when she mentioned the gas can. He froze. "How do you know about that?" he asked, his voice trembling slightly. The detail about the gas can had never been made public. That one reaction was all Sarah needed to confirm her instincts. David continued to insist he was innocent, sticking to his casino alibi, but the surveillance footage told another story. He'd left the casino early and never returned. Security cameras from a gas station along the route captured him buying fuel and a lighter around 9:45 p.m., less than an hour before the fire. Still, the case wasn't airtight. There was no direct evidence placing him inside the house when the fire started. Detectives knew someone else had to be involved, someone who knew the family's schedule, someone who could make sure Michael was home that night. The deeper they looked, the clearer it became. This was no impulsive act. It was a carefully planned betrayal woven with greed, lies, and unimaginable cruelty. Weeks passed as detectives continued piecing together the puzzle. They had evidence against David Carter, but something still didn't make sense. The way the fire was set, the timing, and the fact that the children's bedrooms were targeted first, it all suggested that someone else had helped him. Detective Sarah Mitchell couldn't shake the feeling that there was a second person involved, someone close enough to know the Harris family's daily routine. Then, during one of Michael's physical therapy sessions, another breakthrough came. As his strength slowly returned, so did fragments of his memory. He suddenly froze mid-sentence and whispered, "David wasn't alone that night. There was a woman, I heard her voice." Sarah's heart pounded. A woman. Michael described hearing a soft, familiar tone, someone trying to calm David down, saying, "Hurry up, we don't have time." He remembered seeing a shadow move near the back door just before the explosion. Detectives immediately re-examined phone records, looking for any female contacts frequently linked to David in the weeks before the murders. One name appeared over and over again: Claire Matthews, Laura's best friend. Claire had been deeply involved after the tragedy. She'd organized fundraisers, stayed by Michael's bedside, and comforted the grieving community. Everyone saw her as a symbol of compassion. But when police dug deeper, they found that she and David had exchanged over 50 phone calls in the 2 weeks leading up to the fire, and several on the night it happened. When detectives brought her in for questioning, Claire tried to maintain her composure, but under pressure, she began to crumble. Tears streamed down her face as she confessed everything. She and David had been having a secret affair for months. The plan had been to stage a break-in, frighten Laura into handing over cash, and later collect the insurance payout. But things spiraled out of control when the children woke up and started screaming. Michael's attempt to protect his family led to a fight, and in a panic, David set the house on fire to cover their tracks. Both David and Claire were arrested and charged with triple homicide and attempted murder. Michael Harris, though forever scarred, lived to tell the truth. His courage exposed the darkness hidden behind familiar faces, proving that sometimes the most horrifying monsters are the ones who share our family photos and smile at our dinner tables.